costume.
Oh, what's that you got?
I'm unpacking shit. And I found like a bag of like wool. And check out this look how that looks like spider webs. Isn't that nice? Anyway.
That's incredible.
I know. It's beautiful,
I'm
right?
really drawn into that network of strings and weavings and the threads.
It's gorgeous, right? I don't even know what it is. It's something I have like a just closing window here. I have like so many bags and boxes of shit in this room. Like this room is it used to be my bedroom, and now it's kind of changed into like I just moved all this plant material shit over to this side just so I can bring my computer back in here. And it's like not even a room anybody's using, just all my shit is using this room. So I'm just kind of unpacking my shit because you suggested this.
That's right.
Yeah.
So welcome
to Serena. Yeah, this is Serena and I'm Belinda, and we're trying something out, right?
Yeah, welcome to Weaving Witches Unpacking Their Shit. Or unpacking their treasures, truly, and unpacking their stories.
Yeah.
The stories that are contained within those threads that weave us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that's Belinda and I's connection comes from all these threads that have weaved us together. So we're talking from across overseas, across the strait of what's that? Georgia Strait, I guess.
Georgia Strait, I think so. Yeah. Do you want to say something about the land you're on right now? Make an acknowledgement or say thanks for
so I'm on the Coast Salish territory of Algonquin speaking peoples just outside of Victoria, that was also known as Metula is another name for it. And so the Sartlet, Sayout, Songhees peoples are all around here. And so I'm on these beautiful lands, and I make my way between also the Sauk Nations and through Cowichan and create and weave stories on these unceded territories.
It's so nice to hear you say that. I have as a screensaver on my old cell phone still the word Saut, but I never really knew how to pronounce it. I put it there when I was staying with Josiah and Christine on Salt Spring Island. Just to name the bay and that area of the Fulford Harbor that I always love to sail into, and it makes my heart sing. So I needed to name it, but so how did you pronounce that?
Sayout, like Tsawwassen in the way that it's spelt with a T. Tsawwassen, but this is Sayout, so yeah, it's TSW, Sayout. Yeah, and they have lands in the Saanich Peninsula here where you come in at the Sports Bay, and then also on Salt Spring as to where you said in the Fulford Harbor.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm Belinda White, and I am on this call here with you, Serena. Thanks so much for inviting me and initiating this. I'm presently in my home, which has a name called the Linden Tree Home, and I'm about halfway up the rise from sea level on the way to the Colonial Cemetery at the very top of the hill. And yeah, under my feet are probably many old creeks that have been covered in concrete that would have run down the estuary and into the ocean where I live. And this is the traditional territories and unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam peoples primarily, but also Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish as well. And yeah, I don't know, I'm feeling super grateful for the rain and the wind that's shaking things up finally, making it feel like fall, and especially grateful for you kind of like pulling me in on a thread to start some kind of very meaningful, wacky project that's presently unfolding.
Beautiful. Thank you to the land that you are on. So Belinda and I, we have this common thread and this passion and this love for weaving and for stories. And so that's what brought us here today. And the love of both, like these handcrafts of fiber arts, whether it be animal fibers or plant fibers, and we're really coming into that season. And then these ways of sharing stories and specifically stories of transformation, as it's what really is upon us now, as we're entering this Scorpio season. And I guess some people call it the season of the witch, and a time when I get really busy and alive, and like, there's just a lot going on, and a lot of our gifts and medicines are being asked of right now, to be drawn out and shared as we enter into this darker period. And so, yeah, I'm feeling more alive, even just sharing this right now.
Yay.
So there was this conversation that came up with you and I the other day, that in particular, that it brought a bit of grief.
Okay.
And it was that I these stories are story of the day, and we want to share it with each other, or someone. And you, Belinda, had mentioned, about catching stories in a cultural tradition that you had studied a little bit above. Are you able to speak into that?
Sure. Yeah. Are you referring to like what I've heard of the Sand Bushmen and through the Eight Shields movement? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I wish I had a handy dandy sunshine here. I have a basket. It's not the right kind of basket. It is. I mean, let's see now. You and I both share some training, some experience, and some wisdom traditions through something called the Eight Shields. So we both identify, I believe I can speak for both of us, as coyote mentors, in that we work with mentoring children and youth, and also adults, in deep nature connection and also culture repair. And those life ways come to us through like a long line of different people, like a long lineage. But namely, the first one behind would be John Young and all of the different elders and teachers and wisdom carriers that informed John Young's co-creation of what we understand now as the Eight Shields nature connection movement. So there's just so many to mention, that I probably won't go into now, but just to name just one or two, maybe Tom Brown Jr. and Ingwe and the Chips family. Oh, I could go on. But John Young, in his search for what really helps people feel connected, and not just to nature, not just to the birds and the bees and, the rain and the earth, but also to like some other kind of nature, like their inner nature, or this greater nature, the universe. Did a lot of research because he found, his gateway was naturalist knowledge, and he became a specialist in bird language and wrote a book called What the Robin Knows, and found himself with senior ornithologists in the university, and was very shocked to realize that even though they were PhD'd bird experts, they didn't have anywhere near the same knowledge that he had, because he'd been mentored by a man called Tom Brown Jr., who had been mentored by an Apache tracker called Stalking Wolf in a more indigenous understanding of bird language and how all the beings, not just the birds, interacted together. So John Young was like really stunned by this. And so in his journey to research and understand more, he also found himself looking for indigenous hunter-gatherer cultures that were still intact and functioning, alive today on the earth, to be able to learn from them. And he encountered many, but one particular group specifically that he has spent an enormous amount of time with is the Sand Bushmen. So through his experience with the Sand Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, I have learned about some of the ways that they use story, and we think of story as so many different things, like I have this little tiny chain here. It's got bees on it. Oops, my camera's over here. It's got bees on it. It's very pretty. It's got little yellow amber stones and teeny tiny beers. It was given to me by my mother when I was 18 years old, and sadly it's broken. But it's always on my altar because it represents honey and my identity, the way that I attach to the creature that is the honeybee. And I know that we share that. And how's that connected? Is that story, that's like a personal story. That's something that's followed me since I was very young, a relationship to bees. And I know that my ancestors had that relationship. My Portuguese grandfather was a beekeeper. In fact, I just caught a story that I'd never heard before from my 75-year-old mother about an experience with her grandfather beekeeping when she was a little girl in the garden that she grew up in. And stories are like that. Sometimes they're personal, right? But sometimes they're just like the story of the day, like wiping off the road dust. Like, how did he get here? You know, today I've been indoors all day. I've been working hard on my computer. My body's a bit tense. I kind of wish I was outside with you, Serena, walking through a forest, having this conversation, not trapped on a desk. So that's like my story of the day, right? And I live kind of live alone. I have a teenager and I have a roommate. But we don't always exchange the story of our day. You know? And then there's other stories. There's like mythic stories. Today I was recalling a story called Jumping Mouse that was told to me in a nature connection class by a woman called Fern. And it's a transformational story. And I was remembering just how impactful that was around the fire in the dark with everybody blindfolded after doing the string walk. You know, this old story that's traveled, who knows where, underground, through the stars, through our DNA from an ancient, long ago time, and yet has such a big ripple on us today. So there's all these different types of stories, right? There's even media stories, Facebook stories, and Instagram stories. So story is kind of ubiquitous. In fact, it's almost impossible to breathe without breathing in a story or breathing out a story. It's pretty much impossible to tread on the earth without coming into contact with a story. Like I learned from Jade, my co-mentor, who's a herbalist and a jeweler, the other day, that when you put your feet on the ground, the mycelium are listening to your footsteps and communicate your presence on the land to all the other beings. So that's a kind of storytelling. The mycelium are saying, she was just here. She just bumped her foot down, or she just trotted away. She's an upright mammal. She probably has no skin because she's very heady, I can tell. You know, how does the mycelium know that about me? So this is story. Right? So the Kalahari Bushmen.
The stories are endless. They're incredible. Like they're the magic and the richness, the gold of life. So so the Kalahari Bushmen.
Kalahari Bushmen. John went to meet with them because they were the only hunter-gatherer communities alive on the earth today, still functioning with their traditional ways, their life ways and their food ways, right? Their subsistence ways, where every single member of the culture is a tracker. So every single member understands the interrelationship between the predators and the prey on their particular land in the Kalahari Desert. Women, men, children, elders, all of them. And, you know, luckily for John Young and luckily for the rest of us, many incredible tools, I guess, and skills have been gleaned and borrowed and communicated and from this culture. And one in particular that really struck me the first time I heard about it, I wonder when that was, probably at Stoll Lake Farm at one of the filmings of the 512 project about 5 years ago, was that in the Kalahari, among the Bushmen, bush people, they say that the story of your day should be caught by 6 people who've known you since you were born. You know?
Yeah. And yeah.
It's really intense. Yeah.
And so just hearing that the other day, like just sitting with that, letting that land, wow, how many of us out there have that village around that we can be heard and caught in our story. And it brings grief, and on the other side of it, it brings praise, because I want to make this happen.
Make it happen, right?
And I want to make this happen. And in my current work, I'm blessed to help hold space for that and catching the stories of children in the forest and catch those stories for them. And then I get off work and I'm like, wow, I'm so full of story right now from these experiences with all these children. And so then I want to share with people, and and I'm full in the day with community, and then I'm pretty alone at night. I'm not living in a village right now. So we do have this thing that I do at the end of the day, and I write the parents the story of the day, and I have this ability to get to share it and get it out in this way. And so just a little background on me is that I used to want to be a photojournalist. That was a dream job for me. And I became a flight attendant and I worked the skies. And I was catching so many stories up there. And then when we'd land, I'd go out and I'd have these long layovers and I'd continue to catch stories. And I got this name called Flying Fox. And I was out there like the other Fox News. And so right now I was trying to give the other side of the Fox News, what you don't really hear. And so right now that's came alive in me again yesterday from a coworker, Megan Raven Bear, and she's like, Flying Fox News. And so yeah, I got re-sparked in this way to really like collect stories, whether there are personal stories of transformation or these amazing mythical stories, whether it be of the wild old Kaliak or the hag or the coyote. And so here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are today.
I think I share so much of that sort of joy and gratitude for being able to catch children's stories, right? Or the story of youth in these nature connection programs that we both work in. And also that same sort of longing when I come home alone. If I'm lucky, my roommate and I might exchange some time of sharing the story of the day. And likewise, I also write up little summaries with photos and words about the story of the day for the children, for the parents to share with their children, with the invitation that parents look through the photographs and talk about these things, right? Which I know they don't always do, because we have this problem where we're just too busy and we all live quite isolated, And we also, even people who have families that they live with, or collective houses or shared living situations, that everybody is still always a little bit overburdened, that we don't quite have the time, to do it, or that we haven't been taught that this time is important. Do you know what I mean? That we need to carve it out. It's one of the things I like about the 8 directions model, these wheels. I wanted to show you the bottom of a basket because this isn't one of the kind where you make, but if you can imagine a basket that has spokes in it, right? That has these spokes that are then tied together and spread out and woven a little bit like a spider web, right? Or a sun with rays, a circle. And all of the cultures around the world, I think pretty much without exception, have used the cycles around the sun as a model for understanding the patterns of human life. And in those directions, in those 8 directions, north, south, and west and east, and southwest and so on, the non, what are they called? Cardinal and
cardinal, fixed, and then the spoke, we actually call them spokes in the ancient Irish wheel that I've studied, which is an eight shield as well, 8 directions, and then these transition points that turn the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah. So actually the season we're in right now, Samhain, is one of those 8 points. Right. And in ancient Celtic traditions, it was the beginning of the wheel, but it's like this turning of time, whereas the cardinal directions are like a still point for 3 days of like frozen time, and like the sun is at a standstill during that time. But the other transitional spokes, they turn it, like Beltane is on the other side of Samhain, and it's like like a 9-day festival, fire festival, and it's turning the season into
it's about motion and motivation and shifting.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's so interesting. I mean, I guess what I'm noticing here, I was like, don't interrupt me, I have something to say, but then I was like, wait, there's a gift here, And what I'm noticing is what my focus originally was on the stiller times, in the sense that you know, in, for example, the Southwest time or the Northeast time, you know, or what we're going into now, Scorpio time, right? Like the beginning of the nighttime, there was a slowing down. There was kind of this slowing down. And so if we use the 8 directions even to create an almost like an agenda for the day, you know, in a healthy day, we'd have a lot of story time, a lot of time for story sharing. And the story sharing might happen while we were busy making food. Do you know what I mean? Or busy tanning hides, or busy weaving baskets, or busy darning socks. Do you know what I mean? Or busy building wool. And so there would have been a lot of together time, because making a fishing net, right, takes like what, 100 people, 5 weeks.
Yeah, especially when you're working with nettle.
That's a lot, or cedar, right? That's a lot of together time. And that would have been labor and story went hand in hand. And I think that's another area where you and I share, is that we like to keep our hands busy, and we like to engage in these earth skills and these creative beauty skills, making beauty medicine, while we also have this huge need to communicate across space, and communicate across loss and loneliness, and to repair these rifts. And if you can see that the repairing of community and the repairing of socks or blankets is so similar, right? It's so crazy. But the problem we're faced with now is most of our productivity, luckily for us, not so much, because we do great work, right? But so many people are so busy because they're so taken up with making money to pay rent, you know, or making money to pay for their children's education or childcare. So there is no time left. There's hardly even time to cook a half-hour dinner, let alone sit down with your children for 3 hours and share the story of the day. Forget the stories of your ancestors, or a good myth or two. Like they just, and so we have this lack, right? We have this problem. And I think for me and you, or for me for sure, is this question, is how do we make more time to share these different levels of story? And even just starting with the story of the day, how do we do that? How do we help other people do it? And how do we even let people know that it's important, right? So we all come home and we're alone, or not alone. We might live in a household with 5 people, but nevertheless, almost every single member goes on their phone. And they're all reading stories and sharing stories. This is a deep-seated human need. That we are now all addicted to doing it on our phones. You know what I mean? So it hasn't gone away. The need hasn't gone away, even the activity. And when I look at how much time I've spent on Facebook or Instagram, oh gosh, 7 hours? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Right? So anyway.
I guess what's missing is that hearth, like that common place, that hearth where the heart is and the fire is, where we're gathering around. And so, yeah, that is part of the problem and the challenge in bringing that back. Yeah, and finding our way. Like, so here we are, we're meeting in our hearts, and we're also wanting to get stuff done, like practical matters. And we've all been through this eclipse together, and this eclipsing, and we're in the middle of it because there'll be another eclipse in the full moon.
What did this last eclipse do? Can I just cut in, because I know less about it than you do, so I'd love a summary of that.
Basically, it's happened in Scorpio, and Scorpio is a place of transformation and cleaning out, and like, you know, making space. It's letting something go. And in pre-Celtic, the wheel, they started the new year at that time of Samhain, and it when we would start like a ritual or a ceremony, we begin by letting something go. And then you start to fill the space. And so here we are with this eclipse, and a day or two before it was coming, I could feel it, because my rising is at 0 degrees in Scorpio. So this initiating into this energy, and having this deep desire to hold space for people to transform and to experience almost like a death to create, to make space for creation. So I started purging and I started unpacking and just cleaning up. And that's when our first phone call came in together. And I was going through my craft section, which is probably the biggest section in my house.
I'm just like, what craft section?
Yeah.
I'm just like, what is all this good stuff? I'm like I got a bag full of just silver things. I don't even know when I got it.
That's right. It's, yeah. So I have like all these little mini environments in my home and little cute little beauty stations and stuff. And then this huge pile of all my mess. And I just needed to go through the strings. And I thought, I need to be listening to something as I'm unpacking my stuff. I need to be, and I thought, well, maybe this is a perfect time for Belinda and I to connect. And we started sharing together and basically unpacking our stuff. And it as I'm clearing out my baggage and my gems and picking out what is it that's taking energy from me and what is it that's bringing energy into my life. And how can I share these items with others? Because in your bag there, like, I want to peek in it. There's treasures in there for me. And you're carrying all this stuff as a story weaving woman.
Yeah.
And you're carrying it all. And are we carrying it just for ourselves? You know, we have this desire to share, perhaps. And
yeah. Well, and I wonder, like, I've accrued so much sort of guilt and shame around having too much stuff and stuff that sometimes I don't even look at, like kind of buried, right? Buried treasure. And I guess the buried treasure in my home, in my storage, in my dusty boxes, is similar to the buried treasure in my heart, you know, or in my soul. Like it's really wanting to be shared and used and transformed, you know, not just to stay like plastic trinkets that are waiting to become something, but actually to become something or to be touched and held and transformed by other people. And I guess, what are the conditions that leave it locked away? Just gathering dust. That's in my case. And I guess they are, it's like something that's connected to trauma and grief in a way. And it's the trauma of time, not enough time, and it's the trauma of too much loneliness, you know, and it's the trauma of doing the work I do or the work you do alone, like parenting alone or paying rent alone, you know. And so it's very complicated. It's very complicated, but there seems to be some ways to begin to unpack it, right?
I heard you say something the other day that really resonated. It touched me in so many ways because I related with it. You said it's like I'm Turtle Island woman, or I am a Turtle Island for others.
Yeah,
Carrying all this stuff.
Yes, it's so funny. I'm like, where's my handy dandy rock painted like a turtle? I want to like show it, you know. Hey, look, isn't this cool? Look, I have like silvery spider webby mesh. I have a feeling that I'm finding my Halloween costume as we speak.
I bet. So
but anyway, I will talk about Turtle Mama.
And this is why you carry that stone, because you have a story with it, and they're like our story pieces. But yes,
right.
please.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to have all those, you know, we call that in early childhood education, they call it the theory of loose parts. So when you have so many loose parts, and, you know, when kids are, you know, kids don't need toys, they just need cardboard boxes, right? Cardboard boxes are the famous loose part, but so are sticks and stones. Like, kids don't need mouse puppets, they can just use pine cones, you know. But the funny thing is that adults are kind of similar, you know. Give a group of adults a giant tickle trunk full of costumes at a party and watch what happens. It's pretty fun, you know. We are actually kind of activated by these loose parts. We all have like a deep-seated creative urge because we're children of nature, and nature is filled with loose parts. You know, they're constantly transforming themselves, right? The river is always working on the stones, carving stones, right? The wind is working on the branches and the leaves and the clouds, right? The sun is working on the berries and the skins to dry them. Like, everything in nature is always interacting and transforming something else. But there's this opposite side, and I was trying to unpack my guilt and shame around having a house full of boxes. You can't really see it here, but just boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. And I have $200 worth of storage that I haven't looked at in like 5 years. Crazy, right? And I don't even have enough money for rent, yet I spend $200 on storage that I can't afford. So what is that? Like, what is that? And so, of course, my first instinct was just to feel like some kind of loser, that there's something wrong with me. And then I was like, well, that doesn't feel very healthy. It's not really helping me. Ooh, I just found something that's going to look like a raindrop when I stick it onto my Halloween costume. I'm very excited. So I decided to, it's just plastic. I decided to think of a positive way to look at it. And so I invented a new trauma. I called it Turtle Mama Trauma. Turtle Mama Trauma was this way that I had of moving a lot. I was always moving. So I'm the parent of a 17-and-a-half-year-old, and we've lived in 8 different houses in his lifespan in the city of Vancouver here on Musqueam territory. And all those times I brought all those boxes with me, some of which have never been unpacked in 8 years. And sometimes I would move into a house and it would have a large closet and I would stuff it full of boxes and then I wouldn't even unpack. Why? Do you know why? And so I could only think that in the absence of like bricks and strong wood and a home that would hold me, I somehow packed around my shit, packed around these boxes. And often they were like lovely, like mementos of my son's childhood or his artwork or these endless supplies of like plant material. Boxes of pine cones, like as if I couldn't get more next year from the forest. But I'd carry the pine cones with me. Or there'd be cool toys that I got from the free store, or pieces of shrunken wool sweaters that one day I'd cut into hats and learn how to do blanket stitch with and make into cute fox toques for children at forest school, and 1,000 different creative ideas. And all of these supplies would be kept to one day make into something, or to one day run an amazing tinkering school. Do you know what I mean? Or like, I think we have a bag of 15 Nerf guns, for example, still. Like, we still have it because it's very fun to take Nerf guns apart and spray paint them purple and pink and see what you can make of them. It's very fun. So I kept all this stuff and I figured out that I kind of protected myself with it. So I packed it on my back like a big old turtle shell. And it's a lot of weight to carry that. But that was kind of my moving home. And I realized that was a bit like what folks did when they were transient, what our Gypsy ancestors did, our Roma ancestors, what our, many different ancestral groups that I know are in my past.
Silk Road travelers.
Yeah, were exiled or were travelers by choice, And so there's some kind of knowledge about that. And the knowledge is not just a burden. It's not just a burden. It's also like, what moss does the Rolling Stone carry? Because what, we can carry some things, and Rolling Stones carry a lot. There's this idea that they carry nothing, that a Rolling Stone carries no moss, and it's actually not true, because Rolling Stones carry like the song of 1,000 rivers. You know what I mean? And Rolling Stones carry minerals to like from one part of the world to another. So I guess I've been thinking a lot about that, like what it is to carry. And what am I carrying? And what I'm carrying is stories.
Yeah. And so that's why I was going to ask. So why this problem? Like, why did you, without being a victim of it, why did you choose to have this problem where you're carrying all this stuff? And what came to me is, I was like, you're carrying a nomadic school with you. You're a storyteller, you're carrying. And likewise, I've got an attic over there that's just full of treasures, and I started unpacking it these last few days, and bringing it to my school, and like, oh yeah, I've got all these materials, and here we're if we were traveling or in the village, we would just have all these things, and
right, yeah. I guess I'm still curious. Well, I don't know if this is the shame talking. Like, I think that I'm keeping this stuff maybe for some future project, but I wonder if half of it won't be used. So one of the things that I've come to, I've all my life I've been kind of like an overflowing stream. I still have a story that I wrote in maybe grade 9 where the teacher was like, fantastic, but how do you turn off the tap? You know, how do you know? How do you know when to turn off the tap? I've always been likened to water. I'm very watery. And
Oh my gosh, I'm a bubbling brook too.
I've always been a bit too much, right? So people are like, so over the last few years, one of the tasks I've set myself is I guess it's a task that also comes from Baba Yaga, Vasilisa, you know, in the story of Vasilisa and Baba Yaga, which is like the old Cinderella story, right? Where she's out there, she's got to work for the old scary witchy crone, and Baba Yaga, you know, sort of says you got to separate. Oh, there it is. Separate the poppy seeds from the ashes, or the poppy seeds from the grains, or some sort of impossible task, right? And so in one interpretation of that by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, this was like the honing of the very important female skill of discernment, separating this from that, this from that, this from that. And it's a bit like what you're saying for Scorpio season, right? Like, it's like, how do you let go? What do you let go of? You know, what do you clear the space?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like in this room, I had to pull out a queen size mattress in order to do this call. And when I pulled out the queen size mattress, I revealed my large shelving unit, which you can't really see here, but it was a shelving unit that I originally refinished all white, like a tabula rasa, like a white canvas, to then arrange and store all of my collections. So I have like a collection of cloth, sarongs, old bits of carpet, things that I've used to make forts, like fairy forts in the middle of the trees with children. And I was going to fold them all and stack them on the shelf, take a picture, and then throw them away. Or not throw them away, but recycle them. I was going to take all my toys, arrange them on the shelf, take a picture, and then get rid of them. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't let go of them. I'm not very good at letting go of things. So when I cleared out the big queen mattress from this room in order to have this call today, I noticed the shelf. And I was like, oh yeah, the shelf, that had a purpose. What's the forgotten purpose, right? When I cleared out this desk and I put my computer back here, I was like, oh yeah, I love working at this desk. It reminded me. But I guess what's the next step? Like, how do you, and maybe you can speak to this, how does one figure out what to let go of? Like, how do you know when it's time to let go of something?
Yeah, what jumped in my mind was actually the suggestion that Randy Jones had given you on creating those altar spaces in nature.
Yeah.
And this you had mentioned it, and I've thought of it before, is setting up like random little fairy gardens in a park.
Yeah.
Maybe find where there's a hole in a tree, the base of a arbutus. Some of them have those beautiful holes. Yeah. And create a little doorway at the bottom and put some treasures in there. Right. And in this way, you're giving it, you're passing it on. You're creating this space for other children to enjoy this magic from your blessed inner child that's been collecting all these things. And passing it on with this intention that you're giving it to nature, or you're giving it to that child that's going to find it, and creating beauty, spaces of beauty. And or in what Randy Jones, I think you said, had suggested with you, it was stuff that was special to you from your child, from your son, and wanting to hold on to those things, that create a special space like for him in nature. And
I love that idea too, but it still doesn't meet the need for me, of figuring out what to hold on to. Like, you know, what about if I run a school with you one day on some shared land that we own? Like, there's this like kind of sort of a little bit fearful need that I need to keep all these things because they may come in handy one day, you know.
Because you're the Turtle Island mama. You're the mama.
So how do you choose which ones to keep and which ones to give away? And maybe I want to keep some of the toys for my son to remember by, because he doesn't have an album of photos. He never had a home that he grew up in. He grew up in 8 homes. You know what I mean? So he doesn't, like some people remember their childhood, they just remember their bedroom. They've always had the same bedroom. And it's not a big deal to, like, I don't, you probably, did you grow up in one home or several homes? Or?
By the time I was 17 years old, I had lived in 21 homes.
Oh.
And some of those homes were buses, some of them were tents, many of them were motels. And yeah.
That's
so
cry because
there was
similar.
Yeah, there was some points where I would refuse to unpack. And I said, no, I'm keeping my stuff in boxes because we're just going to move again. What's the point of unpacking?
Right. Holy F shit. I want to swear.
Yeah.
See, like how that's like a similarity. I did not. I grew up in 2 homes until I was 11. Pretty stable, amazing, fairly pretty good family situation. Nice village setting. And then moved dramatically from England to Canada when I was 11. And that was definitely a severing. You know, there was something lost and some pieces left behind then. But I always wonder like, how come I have this situation? You know, now I can understand why you like to be mobile and why you find
it's just what I know. It's what I know. And in astrology, my south node is in Pisces, and that's the nomad and the dreamer and the mystic, and south node means that's where we're coming from. It's what we know and understand. But in the opposite, I'm headed in the north node, which is a Virgo, which is it represents permanence, whereas Pisces is impermanence and nomadic. I'm headed in the direction of this Virgo, which is permanence. It's the village. It's something, it's not like Burning Man would be the south node, would be the Pisces, but I'm looking for rocks and stones and building of the foundation and the permanent village. So that's truly in the deep depths of my heart's creation. And until then, like Littlest Hobo was my favorite show as a kid. Until tomorrow, I'll just
too.
And my parents made it fun for us. We would hop on we had a blue bus and we'd drive to California, and we'd get to have a lot of amazing outdoor adventures. So I'm so blessed for that way of being and getting to experience that. So I'm great in a backpack, and then I also in deep within though, I'm trying to collect these things to build a permanent home. A village, and like build the village up for everyone, like carry the stuff for all the kids and others. And
so how do you then decide what to, because like the bumblebee goes to every flower indiscriminately and it's all good, carry, and all of that is transformed, all that pollen is transformed and nectar is transformed and turned into something golden and precious for the hive, right? And not just the hive, but also for humans and other creatures who eat the honey. And that's pretty amazing, right? But then we come to this time of year where there's less abundance on the land and things are starting to die, and there's a different kind of gathering, the gathering that helps things to die, which is what spiders do. They're part of the net, and all the insects do it, and the worms and the slugs and all the microbiome as well, the breaking apart, the tearing apart and the wrapping of bundles. And the crazy thing about the spiders is they have this way of like wrapping the bundle, like we do with the gratitude. How do you hone the silver tongue? That's been part of my journey. What do I get rid of? What do I keep? How do I make the message as sparkly like the silver bell, So how does it become so crystalline and so perfect that everybody can hear it and it sounds like something that must be followed, as opposed to how do you, when you are doing your clearing out, how do you choose what things to get rid of, physical things or emotional things, what things to keep? How do you do it?
Because they're happening at the same time, physical things and emotional things. It's clearing out the space. And to be totally honest is that I didn't get rid of like a carload or anything, but I deeply cleaned the items I did have, even like taking them out, the dust that was around the wool and all the woolen fibers, shook that wool out, put the wool in piles to like what I'm going to use, what I can give away, sorted through the things. And as I'm doing this, stories are coming. And so and stories are being released. I'm making this space. I'm creating this clearing out, and I'm getting a new story with these items as I'm going through them. I'm allowing the old stories to die in trance.
Do you have an example? Do you have is one coming up in your mind right now that happened like that? Either one that arrived or one that left? Can you think of something like that?
I'm still in it. To be totally honest, I'm still in it. And this is what's like brewing and coming. So I feel like I'm still deeply in it. And where we have like in our charts our different houses, and we can look where Scorpio falls into which house. So for me, it's in my house of identity. It's the first house. It's my rising sign. And it's also in my house of finances. So I'm allowing this area of my life and those two houses to get totally cleaned out. Who am I? Who was I? What were the stories that I carried? There was a lot of victim stories. So stories of Sedna, the sea goddess. There, this one came back to me, and she is the hero of her own journey, and she rises. And I would love to share that, and that will be in our future calls. We've got some incredible storytelling to share, and stories of transformation. So this is a story of death in an identity that Sedna experiences while she was human walking on land before she was cast to the sea by those who loved her, and she was betrayed. And in the end, she goes through this huge transformation, becomes the hero of her own journey. So right now in this new moon, I'm allowing it to begin, and then in the full moon, it goes through its full experience. I'm turning over. So I'm allowing it to happen in my place of identity and in my finances. So right now I'm like, okay, like I didn't go to the witches market this weekend in Victoria. I knew I had to clean up my own stuff. And then I found an entire witches market in my own home. And I thought, wow. Yeah. I was like, I have all these medicines. Like, let me bottle these up now and move them on and sell them. Where's my resources? I'm full of resources. I can transform myself financially now. And this is the beginning. We're in this new moon of this like really juicy, intentional time. And so, yeah, as far as stories, they're brewing and they're coming. And I'm an aspiring storyteller. I've got so many back here. And this is why, yeah, we've made this connection because it's time for story sharing and telling.
Thank you, Serena. I think I appreciate just what stuck out was first that you're in it. It's not something that happens over a period of 2 days. It's something that happens in a cycle with time, and actually allowing it to be slow in a way, slow and steady. Like keep coming back to the task and give it lots of space and come back to it, but allow it to be slow and not look for results necessarily, but just lean into what is being unpacked, what is being uncovered, what is emerging, right? And then sliding away and feeling all that bubbles up in that process. And I also recognized or heard like, yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of excitement. And there is something about dusting off old trinkets. It's a bit like the dusting off, wiping the dust of the road off, the story of the day. And it's almost like being present. I mean, it makes me think a little bit of animism, or the idea that our trinkets, our mementos, our family heirlooms, even our dishes, as we come towards the ancestor time, right? Are the foods that we cook, the many of the material things that we have in the world around us, and the things like the beings of the earth, the more than human beings, or even the stones, or the minerals or the metals, the things that seem no longer alive, like a tree or a squirrel, but maybe they are. That there is this sort of animism in all of the things, like this amber, who knows where it came from. My mom used to sell amber in her store, and these bees, I don't know who crafted them, but it's made of silver, and a jeweler would have had their hands doing this work, and so all of these things have stories. And there's a guy, you probably know him, Tad Hargrave, marketing for hippies. He wrote an amazing article a few years ago about metal, and he was like, did we ask metal if it wanted to be in microchips? And I was like, whoa, dude, because I was thinking of the sword of the stone and the transformation, the philosopher's gold, and just like, what does it mean to listen to the story of metal? What does it mean to just pick up these things and dust them off and spend some time with them? This is a random piece of plastic, blue plastic disc. A lot of people just think of this as just something horrible and wasteful, something that's going to clog up the garbage heaps, and something that's poisoning the planet. But you know what? We say this, Elena, first time I heard this, it was Elena of Thriving Roots who said it at our eco village during a coyote mentoring training. And she recalled the rhyme, earth, fire, water, and air. Everything we eat and everything we wear is made from earth, fire, water, and air. And that she was as old as maybe 23 or 25 the first time she even had that concept introduced to her. This plastic used to be sea creatures. This is made of gasoline. Where did the gasoline come from? What does it mean when I take plastic to the recycling? Like, what is my experience of listening to the plastic? Well, that's a pretty extreme request. Most people don't listen to the plastic. Well, they listen to the unboxing crinkle, Oh yeah, new things.
I
Like
can't wait to
baby
see
toys.
I can't wait to see what that piece becomes.
Something, some saran wrap. But so that time that you take with all of these objects or things in your home is a kind of listening, right? It's a kind of story catching in its own right, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And I heard you say, referred to it as this road dusting. And I know in our work, in our Eat Shields tradition, when we meet with the mentors in the morning, we allow for this space of road dusting, and we just share. And it's basically anything that's going to keep us from being present in our day. Like, let it out if it's going to hold us back from being present. And then we move into this place of gratitude and bringing our minds together and being present. And so, yeah, this is dusting out, and then we can be present for these stories that are arriving, that are ready, ready to be caught.
These voices, right? There's so many voices and so many, I guess it's just so many clamoring to be heard. And who's going to be doing that listening, right? So how do we?
Who's going to be doing this listening? And that, did you have something coming there? I've got something else.
Oh, no, I can definitely pause. Yeah.
Can't think of it. Yeah, who's going to be listening? So there's these stories for inspiration, these mythical stories of transformation, and then there's our personal stories as well. And I heard you on our call the other day talk about like the understory, and the resume of the soul, and then and then like our upper story, and it's like the resume of the spirit. Who's gonna catch these? And so I'm feeling really inspired to create this space for others as well to come into these places of meeting and sharing.
Thanks for listening so well last time and taking down notes. I think that sort of careful tracking, right? Like the time that we take to journal or doodle or whatever it is that helps us lay out altars, keep track of what's happening for us on the land, internal and external landscapes, right? It's so important. And you writing down those points from our phone call the other day it's so relevant, right? Because what was golden and curious for you, might have also been what was alive for me, and it might be what's alive for our listeners. Do you know what I mean? These are like practices of story catching as well. And today I just so happened to listen to the amazing Emerald podcast. Have you listened to it?
Not yet.
Oh my gosh. I don't know the name of the author. He runs a course called The Mythic Body and has been producing this podcast for some time. And his particular angle is definitely storytelling and the mythic imagination, but he brings audio engineering into his podcasts and does a lot of music production and overlays his philosophy and his storytelling with amazing music. And so he's definitely got a lot of fantastic skills. And today I was listening to him talk about this whole embodied, what it means to be embodied. And he talked about embodied healing and embodied philosophy and embodied. And he talks a lot about how in Western culture right now, it's really fashionable to be embodied. You know, that Christianity and the Judeo-Christian and the corporate world has pulled us out of our bodies so that we're so heady, and, you know, that now it's all about somatic stuff. And you know what I mean? But he said that something's gone wrong is we've stopped listening to the sky people because it's all about being in your body. And he, in a long, meandering, very colorful, very, very alluring and entertaining way, wove a story about how the upper world and the underworld are together. Do you know what I mean? That they play this tandem role, that it isn't just about the descent. You know, in Anna's story, you know, when Demeter lost Persephone to Hades, you know, in the Greek, is it Roman or Greek story, she goes to talk to Hecate, right? She goes, and Hecate listens to the land and can hear where Persephone is, but cannot see. So she goes down to the earth, down to the underworld, and she listens. And then she can't see though, so she goes up to the sky. She goes, I can't remember who the name of the god was, but she goes up high like the eagle to see far. And only by using both of these, by going down into the underworld and listening, and going high to the sky like the eagle and looking, only by bringing these two forces together, you know, does she find her daughter, her lost daughter. And so I don't know his name, but the Emerald podcast was just saying that this is so important for us to not cast out one in favor of the other. That right now there's such a trend with being embodied, but it's very individual. And so he talks a lot about the disintegration, that when we die, we disintegrate, we become the river, we become the hawk, we become the falling leaf when we die, we disintegrate in this way. It's not about just being in the self and being in this beautiful body of mine, you know, and being all doing my yoga. And it's also about dissolving into the many, you know. So yeah, that's been a big part of my understanding. And I think being nature connected has really helped with that, you know, this idea that I am many. Francis Weller, in his book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, talks about the exuberant matrix. And the exuberant matrix is the word for all beings, you know, the sky beings and the stone beings and the furry beings, all beings that at one point in our, well, throughout our evolution as standing beings with skin, you know, and 5 fingers, our nervous systems and our parasympathetic nervous system, I guess, our somatic systems or our consciousness evolved to being informed by this exuberant matrix. Do you know what I mean? And included there is stardust.
Yay!
All, in fact, stardust.
There we are.
We're not just roots and bugs and blood. Do you know what I mean? We're roots and bugs and blood, and we're stardust. So yeah, Bill Plotkin, who is the founder of the Animas Valley School, I guess, and is a great eco-psychologist and has written some really great books that probably...
The Wild Mind. Yeah.
Wild Mind. He also, you know, delineates this soul and spirit, this interplay between what he calls the wild indigenous one, which is down in the south, and it's soulful, and it's in the body, and it's animal, and it's, you know, hairy and delicious and full of endorphins, you know, and also rooted and with ancestors and with muck and down in the dirt on all 4s. And then in contrast, the sort of soul spirit, you know, this sort of ascension. When we look at the world's tree, there's no difference. Do you know what I mean? But when we look at the world tree, the roots and the branches are interchangeable.
Mirror. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like story is, just like the spider web, like connects these opposites,
Mm-hmm.
ancestor time, the time of All Hallows Eve, with the spring vitality of the youth and Beltane and the fire rising out of the earth and the rapid growth and expansion, just like the spider web connects those on that silver thread.
Mm.
And does the same with all the directions. That's exactly what the spider does. I was watching a film of a spider doing the web and then goes around and makes all these all these connections. That's to me the role of story, it's just to help people feel that
Yeah.
web, of connectedness.
Yeah, I'm feeling so much gratitude for the spider right now. And I think that's part of why I'm here with you right now is I have this honey hive collective vision that I started with needle felting these bees, and I share bee medicine all over the place, and I'm buzzing around all summer long, and I in my tinctures I make, I put honey in them, and feel in such connection with the stories of ancient Ireland, of the first people, and the honey. And that's really rich in that Beltane time. So the other side of Scorpio, and in May. And so I've just been buzzing with the bees all summer long. And now I'm like been slowing down this last month. And you brought up like that's the story of the spider. And I wanted to catch more stories of spider. And yeah, it's like we're coming into this time of spider, and we're coming into this time of what can we do now? We can't be buzzing around outside as much and be having camping out all the time, and well, we can still certainly be outside as spider is and around the campfire or the hearth, sharing stories. And so it feels like we're really coming into this time of and from the northwest and into the north, which is the time of the great void. And it's the ancient goddess of Scotland, the Cailleach, and she's known as the great storyteller. And it's in this place of the north that all these stories are that we start to share and birth them. And so here we are.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like we could go on and on and on, and it's just really exciting, and I'm curious, maybe we could, unless there's something else that, I'm trying to think if there's an angle that we've forgotten. I'm just kind of knowing that it's impossible to cover everything at once, and in spaces of forgetting, there is this sort of silence, there's this mystery, there's this darkness of what has been left out, what has not been unsaid. And just to kind of acknowledge that, just to wrap our bundle together, our time together here, to just feel all of the sparkling unsaid things that want to be here too, they want to be heard, and to include those in their silence for now, and unless you had any other burning questions or something, we might try and wrap our bundles somehow. And
it's so beautiful the way that you've said that, and we've brought it together and into the center. And yeah, I feel so grateful to have been in this space with you today, and what is coming from this space and what is being birthed, a few things, and there'll be offerings in the story worlds and in storytelling and sharing. And then there's this passion and training that you and I have in the nature connection mentoring. And so we'll spiral from here. And
Serena, before we say goodbye and turn off our cameras and attend to our next projects, I know you have like another meeting. Oh my gosh, busy times, right?
I just started saying yes to this Zoom box. And said, okay, I'll stay in the box. I'll stay
in the box. I think you might have some time to get up and move your body and do something. Would you be open to just, maybe just like turning inwards a little bit and finding like 3 or 4 things that are nuggets that you're grateful for that we shared today, something that is standing out as, yeah, as precious or exciting. That just to wrap up, just to share in way of demonstrating just gratitude and closing. I'll
Mhm.
take a minute as well, and we could just maybe not name them in a lengthy way, but just really just name them with one word or a short phrase. Just things that
Okay.
you're feeling just excited about that we shared today, and that we might expand on next time.
Beautiful.
Hmm. See if I can figure out what mine are.
Hmm.
I got a couple.
I got a couple.
You want to go first?
Storytelling in the village being caught by hopefully 6 people a day would be amazing. Treasure altars.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, stories of transformation
Hmm.
and Turtle Island Mama sharing her gifts.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think for me, the feeling of being connected, being able to work in tandem.
Mhm.
Um, Robin Wall Kimmerer says you can always braid sweetgrass by yourself, but it's much nicer if somebody's holding the other end. So just appreciation for your holding the other end,
Mhm.
having that doink, that tautness, and yeah, excitement around what will emerge. You know, more of these weaving witches unpacking their treasures and potential workshops and other offerings. And yeah, noticing just the different feeling in my body between the rush of excitement and talking and sharing, and the stillness of listening. Just what that tension, that difference feels like. Yeah, and
Mm.
just a lot of gratitude, and a gratitude even for the unwanted burden of things, that
Mm.
maybe show up that aren't as great. It's like this little treasure jewel is very precious and comes from my mother, and this is just a piece of plastic, and yet neither one is more valuable than the other. So just to kind of like, yeah, appreciation
Mhm.
for all that shows up, even the dust that needs wiping off.
Mm. That's right. To the elements, to the earth, the air, the water, the fire. Oh, and we have songs to share.
Yeah, the earth, the air. How does it go? How does it go? The earth, the earth,
The
the
earth,
air,
the
the
air,
water.
the fire, the earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, return. So we'll return
Beautiful.
another
That
time.
sounds that's perfect. All right, great. So we'll say good night to everybody who's listening, and we welcome your questions and look forward to seeing you again. And this is Belinda White.
Yeah, and Serena Ann with an E, Flying Fox News. And next time we'll share a little more story.
Yeah.
We'll put in a couple stories of transformation or stories of the season, like the little mouse. But we started with the spider and the bee. Love you, lady.
Yeah. Love you too. Thank you so much, Serena. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night. Oh, we got it.
See you, Serena.